YAML. If you search for YAML, let's say I use DuckDuckGo in this example. It says YAML is human readable data serialization language. This means that if you have two different languages, and one language, both languages have similar but yet quite the same objects or data structures, to read output from another language, what you would need to have some sort of intermediate level. So you would use, let's say, JSON, or in our example, YAML. So the first language's output would be the second language's input, right? And that's what data serialization language means. It's commonly used for configuration files, right? And that's my actually how I use YAML from day-to-day basis. It's basically used for Docker Compose files, Ansible, Kubernetes, etc., right? And the first link we see that it's official YAML website. Let's visit that. So YAML, it stands for YAML and Markup Language. This is just some programming humor right there. And it also says that it's human friendly, right? So that's exactly the difference between YAML and, let's say, JSON or XML, right? So let's look at a few examples. So here we have Docker Compose files. And basically what YAML is, it's just key value pairs, right? So we have key, and then the value is string. And then key service has, in this example, an object, right? Etc. And this key has a value which is not visible, its value is null. Let's see one more example. So you could also have language translation. So you have like, this is English, and you have key values, and then you could have the translations for French, for Spanish, Chinese, etc. Right? Cool. Yeah, and what we'll also be using is this YAML viewer, just to parse YAML and see what the tree looks like. And the second thing we will use is also YAML to JSON parser, right? So YAML is basically a superset of JSON. So let's just prove that. Let's say that my name, Tony, and let's just convert this to JSON, right? It's what we expect, and let's just copy this back here, right? Save it and parse it, right? We have JSON, and I convert it to JSON. There's no errors, right? So YAML is a superset of JSON, and what we also need to take care of is the spaces, right? So let's say that my name is Tony, and this is valid YAML, but next key is something else, right? This is not valid YAML file, because actually indentation is something that we need to watch out for, right? Cool. So the first thing we need to do, like, let's go some of the basics. Basically, 99% of the stuff that you will be dealing with YAML are the basics, keys, and values, right? So the first thing, let's look at types. We have strings. Let's say that my string, to my string. We can have a value of a string, some text. We could do it with double colons, right? We could also do it without, right? So that's why YAML is more human friendly, because we can omit braces, double, so brackets, etc., right? So let's just convert this to JSON just to see if the output is the same. So we see that for both key values are basically converted to the same thing, right? But in YAML, most of the cases you will omit double quotes. Yeah, that's it. The second thing we need to discuss with strings is, let's say that you have multi-line string, right? Let's say that we have, this is a multi-line right? Okay. So how you want to parse this is like up to you. If you want to have the string, this is actually a pipe, right? This is not a forward slash. If you want to have this and new lines get converted into output string, you would use pipe here. And I just convert it to see what's happening here, right? So you get key and then value, you get the new lines also inside the string, right? If you don't want new lines, if you want to have like string representation in multi-line, but then you want to have like everything stuffed in one string, you just use greater than sign. Like new lines are omitted, except the last line. If you want to also omit the last line, what you would do is just add minus sign, right? Like this, right? Cool. So that's basically it about strings. About integers, my int, say 1, my float 1.7. If we convert this to JSON, we get what we expect. We get an integer and we get a float, right? There's nothing to it. Let's talk about one of the most useful data structures in assigned YAML, which is lists and objects. So you could write my list, just have it one as an array of objects, array of strings here, right? You could also write this without double columns, right? You could also, if you want to omit this, right, what you need to do is have dashes in front of them. This is also the same, right? So all the three values, when we convert to JSON, we should have the same, like the same values, right? The list of first and second, right? Let's convert to JSON, and that's what we get. We see that the first, second, and third conversion is actually the same. What you would mostly use inside your YAML configuration file is the third option with dashes, right? So these are the lists. Let's talk about objects. Let's say person. Person has a name. Person has an age. Right? If we convert this, we get the key of person, and the value is an object. And that's exactly what we expected, right? The key is a string person, and then the value is an object. What most people are confused at the beginning is that if you do this, right, this is basically a list of an objects, right? So if we convert this, we expect that we have a list of two objects. First has a name and value is Tony, and the second object is an age and value of 20. Let's convert this just to make it clear. So we have a list, right? That's because we use dashes, and we have two objects, right? Yep. Yeah. And talking about objects, we can also have sets, right? And how you would write sets is with question mark. And you write sets like this, right? Save that formatting and just convert it to JSON. What we get is an object, right? This is a set, but it gets converted to an object of null values, right? It's basically an object. We could also write this, of course, knowing that like so, right? It's basically the same thing. Cool. So yeah, these are the basics of YAML, and you would use this 99% of the time, but sometimes you would see some advanced features of YAML. So when you have long YAML configuration files, there's a chance that you have a lot of duplication, and you could get rid of duplications. Let's say that we have configuration for our database. Let's say that we have DB development, which has a host, it has a port 3000. Let's have a user, Bob, password, and let's say that we have another common config, right? Okay, so we have this development environment, and it also, let's have a bunch of those guys. We have a test environment, and we have a production environment. And I'd say that test environment is basically the same as development environment, except port is different. But for production, host can be, I'll write just like port, password, db host, db user, db password. Of course, in this example, this gets converted to a string, but if you have like some sort of parser, you would use your environment variables, and let's say that our port is 443, right? So basically everything is changed comparing to development except the common config, right? Okay, so and you could have like a bunch of those guys right here. So how you would, like, if you know principle dry, don't repeat yourself. If there's duplication and there's a pattern to that, which we see that we have a pattern, what we could do is use anchors, right? And to do that, what we would use is we would call this a base. And basically this is our base db config, right? And to use this base, we can delete this guy here. To use the whole key values inside another object, we use smaller than double so colon and then base, right? And copy that. Like in test, everything is the same as that. Port is overwritten. Inside production, everything is overwritten except common config, like so, right? And to prove that this is actually going to be the same as before, we can go into YAML viewer, paste this code, and see what's happening. So we have 4 dropdowns: DB base, development, test, and production. Let's expand all of them. And yeah, the development is what's expected. The test is overwritten by the port, and production is basically everything is overwritten except common config gets inserted. And that's what we expected. You have other features in YAML, but like I never used any of them. I just show you what I use day to day, from day to day in my job. Yeah, hope this helped, and till next time. Bye.